The Morning is Coming, a story of the deepest loss, the love that found them in it, and the promise that holds. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Revelation 21:4. Some stories begin with joy so complete that you hold your breath telling them. This is one of those stories. It is also a story about what happens when that joy is taken without warning, when the thing you built your life around is suddenly and permanently gone, and how two people who were crumbling under the weight of that found their way to a church basement on a Thursday evening because they had run out of everywhere else to go. This is not an easy story, but it is a true kind of story. The kind that carries something real. For anyone who has ever been in the dark so long, they forgot what light felt like. Marcus and Claire Whitfield wanted a baby for 7 years before their daughter arrived. 7 years is a long time to want something, and the love they had built up in those 7 years, the love that had nowhere to go, that kept accumulating, all of it was waiting for the day Ellie was placed in Claire's arms, in a delivery room in Denver, Colorado, on a Tuesday morning in March. Ellie Whitfield weighed 6 pounds, 11 ounces. She changed everything. And then, on a Saturday afternoon in October, 4 years later, she was gone. Before we move forward with the story, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to help us to grow this channel to uplift more people. They had tried for 3 years before the first clinical intervention. Marcus was 31, a high school history teacher. Claire was 30, a pediatric occupational therapist, which was its own particular heartache, spending her professional days helping children and coming home to a house that did not have one. They went through 2 rounds of fertility treatment before Ellie arrived the natural way. In the month they had quietly decided would be their last attempt before exploring other paths. Claire had described it later as the disorienting grace of something arriving, just when you have released the grip on wanting it. Ellie was not a child who was taken for granted. She was a child who had been awaited and prayed over and prepared for, with the accumulated, patient love of 2 people who had spent 7 years learning how to give it. The nursery had been painted twice before she arrived. The first color had not been right when Claire finally stood in it, and they repainted on a Saturday in August. The baby monitors were the best available. The stairgate at the top of the landing was the highest-rated model they could find. The outlet covers were installed in every room. The cabinet locks were the ones that required 2 hands to open. The bathtub had a non-slip mat and a temperature-controlled faucet cover. They had done everything. They were the most careful parents in their neighborhood. They were not careful enough, not because they failed, but because the thing that happened did not happen inside the precautions they had put in place. It happened in a moment that was no one's fault, which is sometimes the cruelest kind of moment there is. It was a Saturday in October. Marcus was raking leaves in the backyard. Claire was inside folding laundry. Ellie was in the backyard with Marcus, had been with Marcus 2 feet from him for the better part of an hour. She found the gap in the fence. It had not been a gap the previous Saturday. A board had come loose during the week's wind, a single board, in the lower section of the fence nearest the corner of the yard, that produced a space just large enough for a 4-year-old who was curious and quick and unaware of what was on the other side. What was on the other side was the neighbor's yard, and a pond they used for irrigation, and the deep stillness of a Saturday afternoon in which everything happened in less time than it takes to tell. Marcus found her. He will not speak of the finding in detail. He has told his pastor, and his therapist, and Claire, in the fractured, halting way of someone who has experienced something that language was not built to contain. What he will say, to anyone who needs to hear the shape of it, is that the seconds between seeing the gap in the fence and reaching the pond's edge were the longest seconds of his life. Claire heard him call her name. She knew from the sound of it. She ran. Emergency services arrived in 7 minutes. The next hours existed in a suspended, surreal state. People receiving information in pieces that no preparation could have equipped them for. Ellie did not survive. She was 4 years old and 3 months. The grief that arrived in the house on Clearfield Avenue was not a single thing. It was a presence, total, unrelenting, inhabiting every room and every object. The small shoes by the door, the drawings on the refrigerator, the half-assembled puzzle on the coffee table that neither of them could move, and neither of them could look at, the monitor on the nightstand that they had not turned off. Claire's mother flew from Phoenix that night. Marcus's parents drove from Colorado Springs. The house filled with people who loved them and who had no adequate language for what they were trying to say, and whose presence was both comfort and exhaustion simultaneously. The extended family had been Ellie's community too. She had known her grandparents, had been held by them, had given them the particular happiness that grandchildren give. The grief was not confined to the house on Clearfield Avenue. It moved through a network of people who had loved a 4-year-old girl and who were now navigating the terrible, irreversible arithmetic of having loved someone who was no longer there to receive it. The service was held at Cornerstone's Seventh-day Adventist Church in Denver, the church Marcus and Claire had attended for 6 years. Pastor Kevin Marsh conducted it with the honest, unhurried grace of a man who knew that there was nothing he could say that would be adequate, and who had decided that the most important thing was to say true things rather than comfortable ones. He talked about Revelation 21:4. He talked about a morning coming. He talked about arms that had held Ellie and would hold her again. Claire did not hear all of it. She was somewhere else for parts of it, the hollow, suspended state of someone receiving something too large for the available processing. Marcus heard every word. He wrote one line in his journal that night. "I need that to be true." The first month they held each other. The second month they held each other less. By the third month, they were inhabiting the same house in the quiet, painful way of two people who are each so full of their own grief that the space available for each other's has contracted to almost nothing. Claire's depression arrived with the full clinical weight of something that had a name and required treatment, which she received but which was slow and non-linear and produced progress that felt, from the inside, like almost none at all. Marcus's grief took a different form. It turned outward, and then inward, and eventually sideways in the damaging sideways way of grief, without adequate support. He returned to work too soon, because being home was unbearable, and being at work was also unbearable, and he could not find a version of being anywhere that was not unbearable. They began to fight, not loudly, not dramatically, in the grinding, corrosive way of two people who are in pain and who have no place for the pain to go, and who eventually, without intending to, begin to put it in the direction of the person closest to them. Marcus said things he could not take back. Claire withdrew in ways that produced their own damage. The puzzle was still on the coffee table at month 4. Neither of them had touched it. They stopped attending church. Not from a decision, from the accumulated bone-deep inability to be in a room where people were worshipping a god who had not protected their daughter, which was not a theological position, so much as a feeling that had not yet been examined, because examining it required more than they currently had. Claire's mother called every Sunday. Marcus's father visited twice and did not know what to say, and said it anyway, and left both times feeling that he had not helped. By month 5, they were sleeping in separate rooms. Not a decision. Adrift. By month 6, Marcus had met with a divorce attorney, not because he wanted a divorce, because he could not see any other direction for the drift to go. Claire found the flyer. It was on the bulletin board at the pharmacy where she picked up her prescription on a Tuesday. A simple printed sheet for a grief share group that met on Thursday evenings at Cornerstone Seventh-day Adventist Church. The same church where the service had been held. She stood at the pharmacy counter and held the flyer for a moment. She thought about the marriage that was drifting in a direction she could not stop. She thought about month 5 and the separate rooms. She thought about the puzzle on the coffee table. She called Marcus. She said, "There's a grief group at Cornerstone, Thursday evenings." A pause. "I know we haven't been back there. I know it's hard." Another pause. "I don't know what else to try." Marcus was quiet for a long moment. He said, "What time?" She said, 7. He said, "Okay." That was it. Okay. It was not enthusiasm. It was not hope. It was the depleted, last resort consent of 2 people who had run out of other options and were willing to try the remaining one. They drove to the church on a Thursday evening in April. They sat in the parking lot for 4 minutes before going in. The group met in the fellowship hall downstairs. 12 chairs in a circle, a box of tissues on a small table, coffee at the back that was better than expected. 7 other people were there when Marcus and Claire arrived. They were not the demographic Marcus had imagined. He had imagined something more homogeneous, something easier to feel separate from. Instead, there was a retired man named Henry, who had lost his wife of 41 years, and who had driven himself to this meeting every Thursday for 2 months, with the steady determination of someone who was not going to let grief be the last word. There was a woman in her 50s named Gloria, whose adult son had passed suddenly, and who had, in 6 months of this group, become the person who arrived first and set up the chairs. There was a young couple not much older than Marcus and Claire, who had lost a child. A different kind of loss. A different set of circumstances, but the same untranslatable grief that had no equivalent. Their names were Todd and Serena Abbott. Todd and Serena looked at Marcus and Claire from across the circle. No one said anything for a moment. Then Serena said quietly to Claire, "How old?" Claire said, 4, Serena said. "We lost ours at 2. A breath. "There's no comparison. It's all just the worst thing." She looked at Claire with a steady, unwavering gaze. The gaze of someone who is not flinching from what they are looking at. "You came to the right place." Pastor Kevin Marsh facilitated the group. The same pastor who had conducted Ellie's service. He was not there in a supervisory capacity. He was there the way a guide is there, present, unhurried, creating the space for what needed to happen without imposing a shape on it. He began, as he always began, with Revelation 21:4. He read it slowly. "He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away." He said, I want to start here every week because I want us to remember where we are going, not to bypass where we are. Where you are is real, and it needs to be honored, but to hold the destination, to know that the grief we are carrying is not the permanent state. There is a morning coming. In that morning, every person you are grieving will be there, not as a memory, present, because the God who made them has the authority to make them again, and he has promised to do exactly that. He looked at Marcus and Claire. It was their first time and he knew it, and he did not single them out. He said, "If you're here for the first time tonight, you don't have to say anything. You just have to be here. That is enough." They came back the following Thursday, and the one after that. Something happened in that room that had not been happening anywhere else in their lives. Something was being said by people who were not saying it from the outside of the experience. The relieving, almost physical quality of being in a room full of people who understood what you were carrying, not because they had been told about it, but because they were carrying versions of it themselves. Henry told a story about his wife that made the whole room laugh, and then made the whole room cry, and then made the room laugh again, which was the first time Marcus had heard genuine laughter come from himself in 6 months, and which surprised him enough that he sat with it for a long time afterward. Todd talked about the grinding, daily difficulty of being a couple in grief, the way the two people who loved each other most were also the people most in each other's blast radius. He talked about it with the careful, hard-won honesty of someone who had been through the thing Marcus and Claire were currently in and had come out the other side of it. Marcus listened. He looked at Claire. Claire was looking at Serena. In week 4, Marcus said something in the group. He hadn't planned to. He was listening to another member describe the experience of seeing the things, of the person they had lost, the objects, the items, the everyday physical presence of a life that was no longer there, and he said without deciding to, "We have a puzzle. On the coffee table. We haven't touched it." The room was quiet. Gloria said, "How long has it been there?" Marcus said, 6 months. Gloria said, "I understand that completely." She did not tell him what to do with it. She just said she understood. That was enough. That was, in fact, exactly enough. Week 8, Marcus and Claire were driving home from the Thursday group. The mild, particular quality of spring air came through the partially open car windows. Marcus said, "I called the attorney." Claire looked at him. He said, "I called to cancel the appointment." She was quiet. He said, "I don't want a divorce. I want my wife. I want to grieve with the person who is the only other person in the world who loved Ellie the same way I did." His voice came out less steady than he had intended. "I've been so inside my own pain that I couldn't see yours. And I'm sorry." Claire said nothing for a long moment. Then she said, "I moved the puzzle last Tuesday." He looked at her. She said, "I didn't finish it. I couldn't. But I moved it to the box and I put the box on the shelf because I thought maybe someday we could look at it together." He pulled the car over. He was not a man who cried easily. He cried. She held him. They sat on the side of a street in Denver on a Thursday evening in May and held each other in the front seat of a car in the way of two people who had found their way back to each other through the worst possible route and were not going to let go. They went home together. There is one conversation Marcus and Claire have returned to many times since. A conversation that happened first with Pastor Marsh, after a Thursday session, when everyone else had gone, and the three of them were sitting with cold coffee in the fellowship hall. Claire had asked the question she had not been able to ask at the service, or in the months of grief, or in the group sessions. The question that was underneath all the other questions. She said, "Pastor, is she okay? Is Ellie somewhere okay?" Pastor Marsh held the question with the honest weight it deserved. He said, "I want to tell you what Scripture actually says, because I think you deserve the honest answer, rather than a comfortable one." He opened his Bible. The Adventist understanding, grounded in Scripture, is that the dead are at rest. They are not suffering. They are not waiting in pain somewhere. They are in a dreamless, peaceful rest, as if no time has passed. Ellie is not in distress. She is not lonely. She does not know that time is passing. He paused. And she is waiting, though she doesn't know she's waiting, for the morning of the resurrection, when Jesus returns and the trumpet sounds, and the dead in Christ rise. And in that morning she will open her eyes. And you will be there. Claire said, "We'll be there." He said, "That is the promise. Not a metaphor, not a comfort offered without foundation. The literal promise of the gospel. The God who made Ellie has the power and the intention to make her again. And he has said so plainly." Marcus said, "How do you hold on to that when it feels so far away?" Pastor Marsh said, "One Thursday at a time." He looked at them both. "You come back next week. You sit in the circle. You let the people who understand hold it with you. And you read Revelation 21:4 until the day comes when it is not only something you believe, but something you feel." He paused. "It comes. I have watched it come for 20 years. It comes." 1 year, after the first Thursday in the basement, Marcus and Claire Whitfield arrived early for the grief share session at Cornerstone Seventh-day Adventist Church. They helped Gloria set up the chairs. There were 2 new people in the circle that evening, a young couple, early 30s, the careful, fragile composure of people who were in the earliest stage of something they did not yet know how to navigate. They sat close together, without looking like they were comfortable. Marcus recognized it. He had worn it for months. After Pastor Marsh read the opening verse, he asked if anyone wanted to share. The room was quiet for a moment. Then Marcus said, "My name is Marcus. My wife Claire and I lost our daughter, Ellie. She was 4 years old." He looked at the new couple. "If you're here for the first time, you came to the right place." The young woman across the circle looked at Claire. She said quietly, "How old?" Claire said, 4. The young woman said, "Ours was 3. Claire said, "I know. There's no comparison. It's all just the worst thing." She looked at her steadily. She said, "But you came, and coming is everything." After the session, in the parking lot, Marcus and Claire sat in the car for a moment. Claire said, "I've been thinking about the puzzle." Marcus said, "What about it?" She said, "I want to finish it." He looked at her. She said, "Not tonight, but soon. I want to finish it and frame it, and put it somewhere we can see it." He said, "Yeah?" She said, "She was working on it. She picked all the pieces with the butterflies. That was her part. Her voice was steady. "I want to finish what she started." He took her hand. He thought about Revelation 21:4. He thought about Pastor Marsh's words. She is waiting. She doesn't know she's waiting, and you will be there. He thought about a Thursday evening in April when they sat in a parking lot for 4 minutes before going in. He thought about Henry and Gloria, and Todd and Serena, and 12 chairs in a circle, and a box of tissues and coffee that was better than expected. He thought about the morning that was coming. He couldn't see it yet, but he believed it was there. And for now, for the Thursday evenings, and the finishing of puzzles, and the driving home in the spring air, with the windows open, that was enough. Revelation 21:4 is not a verse about the absence of grief. It is a verse about the destination of it. He will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain. He will wipe every tear, present tense of a future reality. The promise is not that the grief will not be real. It is that the grief will be addressed, personally, specifically, by the one who made the people we are grieving, and who has the power and the intention to restore what was taken. Marcus and Claire's story carries truths worth naming. The first is about the invisible, corrosive damage of carrying grief alone inside a marriage. The two people who loved the same child are also the two people in each other's blast radius, and the collision that produces is real and serious and does not resolve itself. It required a room of people who understood, not from the outside, not with advice, but from the inside of the same darkness, to show them that what they were in had been survived. The second is about the fellowship hall on a Thursday evening. The Grief Share group was not a program. It was a community. Henry with his 41 years. Gloria, who set up the chairs. Todd and Serena, who had been where Marcus and Claire were, and had come out the other side. These were the hands and feet of the promise, the people through whom Jesus showed up in the warm, ordinary, unheroic form of people who understood and stayed. The third is about the puzzle. The grief did not end. It will not end. Not fully. Not in this life. But the puzzle moved from the coffee table to a shelf, and from the shelf toward a frame, and the framing of it, the choosing to honor what Ellie had started, is the story's most honest account of what healing actually looks like. Not the absence of loss, the decision to carry the loss towards something, and the fourth, the one that carries the weight of the mourning, is the Adventist promise about the state of the dead and the resurrection, not a comfortable sentiment. A theological position grounded in the same gospel that conquered the grave. Ellie is at rest. She is not suffering. She does not know that time is passing. And in the morning that is coming, she will open her eyes, and they will be there. That is not wishful thinking. That is the promise. And promises made by the one who kept the first one are worth holding. One Thursday at a time, he will wipe every tear from their eyes. There will be no more death, or mourning, or crying, or pain, for the old order of things has passed away. Revelation 21:4. If you are navigating the loss of a child, or the grief of losing someone you love, you are not alone. Support is available. Grief Share. griefshare.org. 1-800-300-955-5000 755. The Compassionate Friends. Child Loss Support. compassionatefriends.org. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to be notified about more inspirational stories on redemption and hope.